The Annals and Antiquities of Rajasthan by Colonel James Todd. A selection of readings presented by Dr. Vijay Raul. History of Mewar Part 2. Samar Singh, having established Bappa on the throne of Chittor, AD 728, we will proceed to glean from the annals, from the period of his departure for Iran, AD 764, to another halting point, the reign of Samar Singh, AD 1193, an important epoch, not only in the history of Mewar, but to the whole Hindu race, when the diadem of sovereignty was torn from the brow of the Hindu to adorn that of the Tata. We shall not, however, overleap the 4 intervening centuries, though we may not be able to fill up the reigns of the 18 princes whose banner at this time was a golden sun on a crimson field, and several of whose names yet live recorded with an iron pen on the rock of their native abodes. An intermediate period, from Bappa to Samar Singh, that of Sakti Kumar, is fixed by the Adpur inscription in AD 968, and from the more perishable yet excellent authority of an ancient Jain MS. The era of Allat, the ancestor of Sakti Kumar, was AD 866, 4 generations anterior. From Bappa's departure for Iran to the subversion of Hindu dominion in the reign of Samar Singh, in AD 1193, we find recorded an intermediate Islamic invasion. This was during the reign of Kuman, between AD 812 and 836, which event forms the chief subject of the Kumanrasa, the most ancient of the poetic chronicles of Mewar. As the history of India at this period is totally dark, we gladly take advantage of the lights thus afforded. By combining these facts with what is received as authentic, though scarcely less obscure or more exact than these native legends, we may furnish materials for the future historian. With this view, let us take a rapid sketch of the eruptions of the Arabians into India, from the rise of Islamism to the foundation of the Ghaznavid Empire, which sealed the fate of the Hindus. The materials are but scanty. Al-Making, in his History of the Caliphs, passes over such intercourse almost without notice. Abu al-Fazl, though not diffuse, is minute in what he does say, and we can confide in his veracity. Farishta has a chapter devoted to this subject, which merits a better translation than yet exists. We shall, however, in the first place, touch on Bappa's descendants, till we arrive at the point proper for the introduction of the intended sketch. Of the 24 tribes of Guhilot, several issued from the founder, Bappa. Shortly after the conquest of Chittor, Bappa proceeded to Saurashtra and married the daughter of Yusu Gol, prince of the island of Bandardiva. With his bride he conveyed to Chittor the statue of Vanmata, the tutelary goddess of her race, who still divides with Eklinga the devotion of the Guhilot princes. The temple in which he enshrined this islandic goddess yet stands on the summit of Chittor, with many other monuments assigned by tradition to Bappa. This princess bore him Aprajit, who from being born in Chittor was nominated successor to the throne, to the exclusion of his less fortunate elder brother, Asil, born of the daughter of the Kaaba, Parmar, prince of Kalivav near Dwarka, who, however, obtained possessions in Saurashtra and founded a race called the Asil Guhilats, whose descendants were so numerous, even in Akbar's reign, as to be supposed able to bring into the field 50,000 men at arms. We have nothing important to record of the actions of Aprajit, who had 2 sons, Kalbhoj and Nandkumar. Kalbhoj succeeded Aprajit, and his warlike qualities are extolled in an inscription discovered by the author in the valley of Nagda. Nandkumar slew Bhimsen Doda, and possessed himself of Deogar in the Deccan. Khuman succeeded Kalbhoj. His name is remarkable in the history of Mewar. He came to the throne at the beginning of the 9th century, when Chittor was assailed by another formidable invasion of Mohammedans. The chief object of the Kuman Rasa is to celebrate the defense made on this occasion, and the value of this rasa consists in the catalogue of the princes who aided in defending this bulwark of the Hindu faith. The bard, in an animated strain, makes his sovereign on this occasion successfully defend the crimson standard of Mewar, treat with contempt the demand for tribute, and after a violent assault, in which the barbarian is driven back, follow and discomfit him in the plan, carrying back the hostile leader, Mahmud, captive. With this event, which introduces the name of Mahmud to centuries before the conqueror of Ghazni, we will pause and resume the promised sketch of the intercourse of Arabia and Hindustan at this period. The Muhammadan invasion, AD 644 to 655, the first intimation of the Muslims attempting the invasion of India is during the Caliphate of Omar, who built the port of Basra at the mouth of the Tigris, chiefly to secure the trade of Gujarat and Sindh, into which latter country a powerful army penetrated under Abul As, who was killed in battle at Aror. The Caliph Osman, who succeeded Omar, sent to explore the state of India, while he prepared an army to invade it in person, a design which he never fulfilled. The generals of the Caliph Ali made conquests in Sindh, which they abandoned at Ali's death. While Yazid was governor of Khorasan, several attempts were made on India, as also during the Caliphate of Abdul Malik, but without any lasting results. It was not till the reign of Walid that any successful invasion took place. He not only finally conquered Sindh and the adjoining continent of India, but rendered tributary all that part of India on this side the Ganges. What an exalted idea must we not form of the energy and rapidity of such conquests, when we find the arms of Islam at once on the Ganges and the Ebro, and two regal dynasties simultaneously cut off, that of Roderick, the last of the goats of Andalus, and Dahir Despati in the valley of the Indus. It was in AD 712 that Muhammad bin Qasim vanquished and slew Raza Dahir, prince of Sindh, after numerous conflicts. Amongst the spoils of victory sent to the Caliph on this occasion were the daughters of the subjugated monarch, who were the cause of Qasim's destruction, when he was on the eve of carrying the war against Raja Harchand of Kannauj. Some authorities state that he actually prosecuted it, and as Sindh remained a dependency of the Caliphate during several successive reigns, the successor of Qasim may have executed his plans. Little is said of India from this period to the reign of Al-Mansur, except in regard to the rebellion of Yazid in Khorasan, and the flight of his son to Sindh. The 8 sovereigns, who rapidly followed, were too much engaged with the Christians of the West and the Huns on the Caspian to think of India. Their armies were then in the heart of France, which was only saved from the Koran by their overthrow at Tours by Charles Martel. Al-Mansur, when only the lieutenant of the Caliph Abbas, held the government of Sindh and of India, and made the island of Bakhar on the Indus, and the adjacent Aror, the ancient capital, his residence, naming it Mansura, and it was during his government that Bapa Rawal abandoned Chittor for Iran. The celebrated Harun Rashid, in apportioning his immense empire amongst his sons, gave to the second, Al-Mamun, Khorasan, Zabulistan, Kabulistan, Sindh and Hindustan. Al-Mamun, on the death of Harun, deposed his brother, and became Caliph in or AD 813, and ruled to 833, the exact period of the reign of Kuman, Prince of Chittor. The domestic history brings the enemy assailant of Chittor from Zabulistan, and as the leader's name is given Mahmud Khorasan Pat, there can be little doubt that it is an error arising from ignorance of the copyist, and should be Mamun. Mahmud's invasion. Within 20 years after this event, the sword of conquest and conversion was withdrawn from India, and Sindh was the only province left to Mutawakkil, AD 850, the grandson of Harun, for a century, after whom the throne of Baghdad, like that of ancient Rome, was sold by her praetorians to the highest bidder. From this time we find no mention whatever of Hindustan, or even of Sindh, until Sabuktigin, governor of Khorasan, hoisted the standard of independent sovereignty at Ghazni. In AD 974, he carried his arms across the Indus, forcing the inhabitants to abandon the religion of their ancestors and to read the Quran from the altars of Baal and Krishna. Towards the close of this century, he made his last invasion, accompanied by his son, the celebrated Mahmud, destined to be the scourge of the Hindu race, who early imbibed the paternal lesson inculcating the extirpation of infidels. 12 visitations did Mahmud make with his Tata hordes, sweeping India of her riches, destroying her temples and architectural remains, and leaving the country plunged in poverty and ignorance. From the effect of these incursions, she never recovered, for though she had a respite of a century between Mahmud and the final conquest, it was too short to repair what it had cost ages to rear. The temples of Somnath, of Chittor, and Girnar are but types of the magnificence of past times. The memorial of Sakti Kumar proves him to have been the contemporary of Sabuktigin, and to one of his son's visitations is attributed the destruction of the city of the sun, Atpur, his capital. Attack on Chittor, having thus condensed the little information afforded by Muhammadan historians of the connection between the caliphs of Baghdad and princes of Hind, from the first to the end of the 4th century of the Hijra, we shall revert to the first recorded attack on the Maurya prince of Chittor, which brought Bappa into notice. This was either by Yazid or Muhammad bin Qasim from Sindh. Though in the histories of the caliphs we can only expect to find recorded those expeditions which were successful, or had some lasting results, there are inroads of their revolted lieutenants or their frontier deputies, which frequently, though indistinctly, alluded to in Hindu annals, have no place in Muhammadan records. Throughout the period mentioned there was a stir amongst the Hindu nations, in which we find confusion and dethronement from an unknown invader, who is described as coming sometimes by Sindh, sometimes by sea, and not unfrequently as a demon and magician, but invariably as Mlecha, or barbarian. From AD 694 to 724, the annals of the Yadus, the Chauhans, the Chavdas, and the Guhilats bear evidence to simultaneous convulsions in their respective houses at this period. In S. 790 AD, the Yadu Bhatti was driven from his capital Salpura in the Punjab, across the Sutlej into the Indian desert. The invader was named Farid. At the same period Manika Rai, the Chauhan prince of Ajmer, was assailed and slain. The muster of the clans, the first of the Khichi princes who occupied the Doab of Sindh Sagar in the Punjab, as well as the ancestor of the Hara established in Golconda, was expelled at the same time. The invader is treated in the genuine Hindu style as a Danava, or demon, and is named Ghair Aram, i.e. restless, from Kujliban, a term geographically given to a portion of the Himalaya mountains about the glaciers of the Ganges. The ancestor of the founder of Patan was expelled from his petty islandic dominion on the coast of Saurashtra at the same time. This is the period when Yazid was the caliph's lieutenant in Khorasan, and when the arms of Walid conquered to the Ganges, nor is there a doubt that Yazid or Qasim was the author of all these revolutions in the Hindu dynasties. We are supported in this by the names of the princes contained in the catalogue who aided to defend Chittor and the Maurya prince on this occasion. It is evident that Chittor was, alternately with Ujjain, the seat of sovereignty of the Parmar at this period, and, as it became the rallying point of the Hindus, that this race was the first in consequence. We find the prince of Ajmer, and the Kotas of Saurashtra and Gujarat, Anga Singh, Lord of the Huns, Bussa, the Lord of the North, Shiv, the Prince of the Jadejas, the Johia, Lord of Jangals, the Aswariya, the Sepat, the Kulhar, the Malan, the Ahir, the Hal, and many others, having nothing of the Hindu in name, now extinct. But the most conspicuous is Dahir Despati from Debal, slain by Qasim, whose expatriated son doubtless found refuge in Chittor. The defeat of the enemy. This attack on the Maurya prince was defeated chiefly through the bravery of the youthful Guhilot. The foe from Kujliban, though stated to have advanced by Mathura, retreated by Saurashtra and Sindh, pursued by Bappa. He found the ancient seat of his ancestors, Ghazni, still in the possession of the Asur, a term as well as Mlecha, or barbarian, always given to the islamic at this period. Salim, who held Ghazni, was attacked and forced to surrender, and Bappa inducted into this stronghold of his ancestors a nephew of his own. It is no less singular than honorable to their veracity that the annals should record the fact, so contrary to their religion, of Bappa having married the daughter of the conquered Salim, and we have a right to infer that it was from the influence acquired by this union that he ultimately abandoned the sovereignty of Mewar and the title of Hindu Suraj to become the founder of the 130 tribes of Naushara Pathans of the West. Kuman II. Let us now proceed to the next eruption of the Islamic invaders in the reign of Kuman, from AD 812 to 836. Though the leader of this attack is styled Mahmud Khorasan Pat, it is evident from the catalogue of Hindu princes who came to defend Chittor that this lord of Khorasan was at least 2 centuries before the son of Sabuktigin, and as the period is in perfect accordance with the partition of the caliphate by Harun amongst his sons, we can have no hesitation in assigning such invasion to Mamun, to whose share was allotted Khorasan, Sindh, and the Indian dependencies. The records of this period are too scanty to admit of our passing over in silence even a barren catalogue of names, which, as texts, with the aid of collateral information, may prove of some benefit to the future antiquarian and historian. From Ghazni came the Guhilot, the Tak from Asir, from Narlai the Chauhan, the Chalukya from Raharagad, from Setubandha the Jarkhera, from Manda the Khairavi, from Mangrol the Makhwana, from Jetgarh the Joria, from Taragad the Rewar, the Kachwaha from Narwar, from Sanchor the Kalam, from Junagadh the Sama, from Ajmer the Gaur, from Lohdargarh the Chandano, from Dasondi the Dor, from Delhi the Tuar, from Patan the Chavda, preserver of royalty, Rajdhar, from Jalore the Sonigira, from Sirohi. The Deora, from Gagron the Khichi, the Jado from Junagadh, the Jhala from Paddi, from Kanauj the Rathor, from Chotila the Bala, from Pirmagarh the Gohil, from Jaislagarh the Bhatti, the Bus from Lahore, the Sankhla from Roneja, the Sehat from Kherligad, from Mandalgarh the Nikumbha. The Barguzar from Rajaya, from Karangarh the Chandel, from Sikar the Sikarwal, from Umragarh the Jetwa, from Pali the Bargota, from Khantargarh the Jadeja, from Jirga the Kherwar, from Kashmir the Parihar. Of the Guhilot from Ghazni we have said enough, nor shall we comment on the Tak, or his capital, Asir, which now belongs to the British government. The Chauhan, who came from Narlai, was a celebrated branch of the Ajmer house, and claims the honor of being the parent of the Sonajairas of Jalore and the Deoras of Sirohi. Nadol is mentioned by Farishta as falling a prey to one of Mahmud's invasions, who destroyed its ancient temples, but from erroneous punctuation it is lost in the translation. Of Raharagad and the Jarkhera from Setubandha, on the Malabar coast, nothing is known. Of the Khairavi from Manda we can only say that it appears to be a branch of the Parmars, who reckoned Manda one of the 9 strongholds, Nokot, under its dominion, established anterior to the Pariharas, who at this period had sovereignty in Kashmir. Both the Dor and his capital, Dasondi, are described in ancient books as situated on the Ganges below Kanauj. It is a subject of regret that the annals do not mention the name of the Tuar prince of Delhi, which city could not have been refounded above a century when this call was made upon its aid. Abu al-Fazl, Farishta, their translators, and those who have followed them have been corrected by the Edinburgh Review, whose critical judgment on this portion of ancient history is eminently good. I possess the original Hindu record used by Abu al-Fazl, which gives AD 862 for the first Anandpal, and as there were but 19 princes who intervened until his dynasty was set aside by the Chauhan, it requires no argument to support the 4 instead of 8 centuries. The former will give the just average of 21 years to a reign. The name of Anand Pal was titular in the family, and the epithet was applied to the last as to the first of the race. The name of the Chavda prince of Patan, Anhilwada, being recorded amongst the auxiliaries of Kuman, is another satisfactory proof of the antiquity of this invasion, for this dynasty was extinct and succeeded by the Solankis in AD 942, 50 years prior to Mahmud of Ghazni, who captured Patan during the reign of Chavand, the second Solanki prince. The Sonigira, who came from Jalore, is a celebrated branch of the Chauhan race, but we are ignorant of the extent of time that it held this fortress, and as nothing can invalidate the testimonies afforded by the names of the Chavda of Patan, the Kachwaha of Narwar, the Tuar of Delhi, and the Rathur from Kannauj, there can be no hesitation at pointing out the anachronisms of the chronicle, which states the Deora from Sirohi, the Khichi from Gagron, or the Bhatti from Jaslagar, amongst the levies on this occasion, and which we must affirm to be decided interpolations, the 2 first being at that period in possession of the Parmar, and the latter not erected for 3 centuries later. That the Deoras, the Khichis, and the Bhattis came to the aid of Kuman, we cannot doubt, but the copyist, ignorant even of the names of the ancient capitals of these tribes, Chhota, Sindh Sagar, and Tanot, substituted those which they subsequently founded. The Yadu, from Junagadh, Girnar, was of the race of Krishna, and appeared long to have held possession of this territory, and the names of the Khengars, of this tribe, will remain as long as the stupendous monuments they reared on this sacred hill. Besides the Jado, we find Saurashtra sending forth the Jhalas, the Balas, and the Gohils to the aid of the descendant of the Lord of Valbhipura, whose paramount authority they once all acknowledged, and who appeared to have long maintained influence in that distant region. Of the tribe of Gusar, who left their capital, Lahore, to succor Chittor, we have no mention, further than the name being enumerated amongst the unassigned tribes of Rajputs. Farishta frequently notices the princes of Lahore in the early progress of Islamism, though he does not tell us the name of the tribe. In the reign of the Caliph Al-Mansur, AD 761, the Afghans of Kirman and Peshawar, who, according to this authority, were a Coptic colony expelled from Egypt, had increased in such numbers as to abandon their residence about the hill of Suleiman, and crossing the Indus, wrested possessions from the Hindu princes of Lahore. This frontier warfare with a tribe which, though it had certainly not then embraced the faith of Islam, brought to their succor the forces of the Caliph in Zabulistan, so that in 5 months 70 battles were fought with varied success, but the last, in which the Lahore prince carried his arms to Peshawar, produced a peace. Hence arose a union of interests between them and the hill tribe of Gakhar, and all the Kohistan west of the Indus was ceded to them on the condition of guarding this barrier into Hindustan against invasion. For this purpose, the fortress of Khyber was erected in the chief pass of the Koidman. For 2 centuries after this event, Farishta is silent on this frontier warfare, stating that henceforth Hindustan was only accessible through Sindh. When Aliptijan first crossed the Indus, the Prince of Lahore and the Afghans still maintained this alliance and united to oppose him. Jaipal was then Prince of Lahore, and it is on this event that Farishta, for the first time, mentions the tribe of Bhatti, at the advice of whose prince he conferred the command of the united forces on an Afghan chief, to whom he assigned the provinces of Multan and Lamghan. From this junction of interests, the princes of Lahore enjoyed comparative security, until Sabuktigin and Mahmud compelled the Afghans to serve them. Then Lahore was captured. The territory dependent upon Lahore, at this period, extended from Sirhind to Lamghan, and from Kashmir to Multan. Bhatinda divided with Lahore the residence of its princes. Their first encounter was at Lingam, on which occasion young Mahmud first distinguished himself, and as the historian says, the eyes of the heavens were obscured at seeing his deeds. A tributary engagement was the result, which Jaipal soon broke, and being aided by levies from all the princes of Hindustan, marched an army of 100,000 men against Sabuktigin, and was again defeated on the banks of the Indus. He was at length invested and taken in Bhatinda by Mahmud, when he put himself to death. The successors of Jaipal are mentioned merely as fugitives, and always distinct from the princes of Delhi. It is most probable that they were of the tribe termed Busa in the Annals of Mewar, possibly a subdivision of another. The Sankhla from Roneja. Both tribe and abode are well known, it is a subdivision of the Parmar. Harbuji Sankhla was the paladin of Marwar, in which Roneja was situated. The Sehat from Khairligad was a northern tribe, dwelling about the Indus, and though entirely unknown to the modern genealogists of India, is frequently mentioned in the early history of the Bhattis, when their possessions extended on both sides of the Hyphasis. As intermarriages between the Bhattis and Sehats are often spoken of, it must have been Rajput. It most probably occupied the province of Swat, a division of the province of Ashthangar, where dwelt the Askenoi of Alexander. The whole of this ground was sacred to the Jado tribe from the most remote antiquity, from Multan, the hills of Jud, to Aswinikot, which, built on the point of confluence of the coasts of the Greeks with the Indus, marks the spot where dwelt the Askenoi, corroborated by the Puranas, which mention the partition of all these territories amongst the sons of Bajaswa, the lord of Kampilnagra, the grand subdivision of the Yadu race. In all likelihood the Sehat, who came to the aid of Khuman of Chittor, was a branch of these Askenoi, the opponents of Alexander. The modern town of Dinkot appears to occupy the site of Aswinikot, when Bhatti chief Rao Tanu was driven across the Sutlej. The Sehats are mentioned with other tribes as forming the army of Hussain Shah, with the Barhas, the Judis, and Johias, the Jads and Jinjohias of Babar, the Bhutas, and the men of Dud. The Chandel, from Karangad, occupied the tracts now termed Bundelkhand. We shall pass over the other auxiliary tribes and conclude with the Parihar, who came from Kashmir on this occasion, a circumstance entirely overlooked in the dissertation on this tribe, nor does this isolated fact afford room for further discussion on a race which expelled the Parmars from Mandar. Such aids, who preserved Khuman when assailed by the Khorasan Pat, fully demonstrate the antiquity of the annals, which is further attested by inscriptions. Khuman fought 24 great battles, and his name, like that of Caesar, became a family distinction. At Udaipur, if you make a false step, or even sneeze, you hear the ejaculation of Khuman aid you. Khuman, by the advice of the Brahmins, resigned the gaddi to his younger son, Jograj, but again resumed it, slaying his advisers and execrating the name of Brahman, which he almost exterminated in his own dominions. Khuman was at length slain by his own son, Mangal, but the chiefs expelled the parricide, who seized upon Lodorva in the northern desert, and there established the Mangalia Guhilets. Bhartari Bhatt III, familiarly Bhatto, succeeded. In his reign, and in that of his successor, the territory dependent on Chittor was greatly increased. All the forest tribes, from the banks of the Mahi to Abu, were subjugated, and strongholds erected, of which Dharangad and Ujragad still remain to maintain them. He established no less than 13 of his sons in independent possessions in Malwa and Gujarat, and these were distinguished as the Bhatera Guhilets. We shall now leap over 15 generations, which, though affording a few interesting facts to the antiquary, would not amuse the general reader. We will rest satisfied with stating that the Chauhans of Ajmer and the Guhilets of Chittor were alternately friends and foes. that Durlab Chauhan was slain by Bursi Raval in a grand battle fought at Kavriya, of which the Chauhan annals state that their princes were now so powerful as to oppose the chief of Chittor. Again, in the next reign, we find the renowned Vishaldev, son of Durlab, combining with Raval Tej Singh of Chittor to oppose the progress of Islamic invasion, facts recorded by inscriptions as well as by the annals. We may close these remarks on the 15 princes, from Kuman to Samar Singhang, with the words of Gibbon on the dark period of Guelphic annals. It may be presumed that they were illiterate and valiant, that they plundered in their youth and reared churches in their old age, that they were fond of arms, horses, and hunting, and, we may add, continued bickering with their vassals within when left unemployed by the enemy from without.